always from the heart of the city, and now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to more of an anniversary. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. If summer is a favorite time for weddings, then it's obviously a favorite time for anniversaries. It was Homer who said, "There is nothing nobler or more admirable than when two people who see eye to eye keep house as man and wife, confounding their enemies and delighting their friends." More about an anniversary this hour with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. RyanDan, Like the Sun, and Daniel Bedingfield, If You're Not the One. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. It was Ogden Nash who wrote, "Marriage is the alliance of two people, one of whom never remembers birthdays, and the other who never forgets them." Now, if we change that reference of birthdays to anniversaries, you have a truth of many marriages, but not all. There are some couples who remember their wedding anniversaries with great care. They plan for each celebration and try to make each one as special as the very first. Some take the opportunity to repeat their vows. This appeared in the July 3, 1990 issue of the Entertainment Weekly Star, and I quote, "The world's most wedded couple first married in July 1937. Since that time, Edna and Jack Moran of Seattle have repeated the ceremony more than 40 times." Unquote. Now that's an anniversary celebration with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Aerosmith and I Don't Want to Miss a Thing. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. I also featured a great duet with Cher and Petera, After All. I'd like to think that's what a good partnership is. Like a duet, complementing each other, each with a special part to play. Bernice Canner reported and interpreted the results of a Psychology Today survey for the March-April 1995 issue. There is one fact that I think bears mentioning. She writes, and I quote, "By a margin of 3-1, panelists find a couple renewing their wedding vows on their 25th wedding anniversary to be more romantic than a couple exchanging marriage vows for the first time." Unquote. Does that speak to the high divorce rate among younger couples? It probably does. And she goes on to say about the reality of a 50% divorce rate in the United States, that fact, and I quote, "may be tempering their enthusiasm." Unquote. If couples today are hoping their relationships have what it takes to last through the years, odds are that they are the other half of the population that are willing to stick it out during the rough times and not run to the nearest divorce lawyer at the first sign of trouble. We may have made divorce the easy answer for too many people. Dwight D. Eisenhower, on the occasion of his 43rd wedding anniversary, said, "I haven't any formula. I can just say it's been a very happy experience. A successful marriage, I think, gets better as the years go by. That's about all." Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Elton John with Your Song. Bette Midler, The Wind Beneath My Wings, and Jim Brickman with Michelle Wright and Your Love. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Many couples wanting to follow tradition should be aware of what society has deemed the appropriate anniversary gifts. This list really hasn't changed all that much. For the early years, you could be really inventive with some of the cheaper presents. For example, for the first year, it was supposed to be a gift of paper. That paper could be having the story of how you met or your wedding vows done in calligraphy and framed. You get the idea. The second year, cotton was the appropriate gift, followed on the third by a gift of leather. The fifth year was to be a gift of wood, followed by woolens on the seventh, pottery or a willow on the ninth, tin for the 10th year, linen for the 12th, crystal for the 15th, and china for the 20th. The 25th wedding anniversary is one that most people know, silver. 25 is a realistic goal. For the 30th wedding anniversary, the pearl, followed by a gift of a ruby on the 40th. Gold marked the 50th celebration. And for those lucky enough to make it to their 75th year together, the gift of a diamond. But what do you give a couple who make it past 80 years? I remember reading a piece in the March 18th, 1990 issue of The Inquirer about A.J. and Willie Anna Powell, who at the time had been married for 81 years. Theirs was a love story that played itself out against the backdrop of 2 world wars and 15 presidents. Up until the time the article was written, when he was 101 years of age and she a young 98. Their secret for a long, happy, successful marriage? Don't go to bed angry. And there is a moral to this next item for all married couples. The moral is don't ever forget your wedding anniversary, if you know what's good for you. One man did forget back in 1992. He lived in Germany. His widow told a Berlin court that she stabbed him in a fit of rage after he forgot to buy her roses. So mark it on your calendar, tie a string around your finger, but whatever you do, don't forget anything about the day you married. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Krista Burgh in a country churchyard and Luther Vandross here and now. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers. I don't need a string around my finger or a mark on the calendar. I will never forget our wedding anniversary because of something that happened on it exactly 14 years ago yesterday. I can even remember the weather that night. Severe weather in the form of a terrible thunderstorm blew through. It was going to be a busy night in the birthing suites of our nearest hospital. You see, my wife was in one of those beds going through premature labor on our wedding anniversary. My son was, and still is, a rather rambunctious sort. He just couldn't wait until the time was right. He was eager to get started on his life. My wife and I were going out for an anniversary celebration that night. The babysitter, my mother, was there to look after my daughter for the evening. But my wife knew something was wrong by late afternoon. After we arrived at the hospital, she was immediately sent up to the birthing suites and attended to by the doctor on duty. The doctor on call made an evaluation and decided that the little guy should stay right where he was for a little while longer. And so she began the process of slowing him down somewhat. But that night was simply amazing. Every birthing suite was filled, and there were even mothers-to-be in the hallway. I walked out into the hall at one point, and you'd swear there was a big party going on. Mothers-to-be and every relative you could imagine. One of the nurses on duty that night said it was like this during every big thunderstorm. Something about the intense low pressure egging on unborn children early. It's true. Ask a doctor or nurse in Florida what happens when a hurricane blows ashore. The same thing. It was Longfellow who wrote, "The holiest of all holidays are those kept by ourselves in silence and apart. The secret anniversaries of the heart." The celebration of our anniversary changed locations that night to a bed in the maternity ward. It is an anniversary I will never forget. Our son was born August 17th that year at 9:10 in the morning. There was something all three of us, my wife, daughter, and I, stood to learn from this child. And he is still trying to learn patience from us. Amy Sky's Ordinary Miracles. I'm Don Jackson from iTunes and CHFI.com. Alexander Pope wrote, "How vast a memory has love." I remember how hot it was on July 28th, 1990. How I thought the minister might faint before he finished the ceremony. I remember the reception and one of Montreal's favorite rock bands playing Just for You. On one very special anniversary card it said, "Anniversaries are special times when the love in our hearts is put into words." I mentioned in yesterday's broadcast that July 28th is my wedding anniversary. And here we are, Lydia, 1 year shy of 20 years together. Where has all the time gone? Again, this show has really been for her this hour, but it's also for all those celebrating an anniversary sometime this year. As I mentioned, we had a live band at our reception, one of Montreal's leading rock bands, the Jimmy Dogs at the time. It was our special gift to our guests who attended our wedding. Here's one of the songs they played for my wife that night. To conclude, Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.